Welcome to another episode of the Instant Celebrity Maker. And today, I truly have a celebrity in the show. His name is Mark Simon, and he is the godfather of storyboarding. Say hello, Mark.
How you doing, everybody? Good to see you, Mitch.
Well, you've got the shirt to prove that you're the godfather. I mean, this is, oh my gosh, the colors there. I don't know if that's tie-dye on steroids, something like that. So how did you get into the storyboarding career, or how did you earn the labeling of Godfather of Storyboarding? Because it had to be earned.
Yeah, it did have to be earned. I've been working as a story artist for over 3 decades now, and I got into it because when I graduated college, I thought Hollywood sounded cool. Now, I always wanted to draw, tell stories. Everything about my life is about story. So I just moved out to LA and found my way through, and I got in as an art director, because my family had owned a custom home building business in Houston. So I knew how to design and build. I figured that was my way in. It was. I got in my very first movie I ever worked on at Roger Corman's studio. I became the art director within 2 weeks. So I was leading all the crews. And so I just went on art directing and production designing for years, which was fun, but I wasn't drawing as much. And I really missed drawing. So I'd seen storyboarding, obviously, in all my productions. And so I went to the biggest agency in the world at the time, called Storyboards Inc. I think they're still the biggest. And I just walked in and I asked to meet one of the owners or agents and showed him my work. He said, "It's terrible." I said, "Okay, show me good stuff." He did, gave me some tips. I went away. I showed up a week later and he said, "Still not good. Better, but not good." Gave me more tips. I showed up a week later and I just kept showing up every week with new samples until he finally said, "You want a Honda commercial?" And he started placing me in jobs. So it was learning, listening, and showing up was the biggest thing. And,
Learning,
yeah,
listening, and showing up.
yeah. So, now over 5,000 jobs later, and I helped develop the main software called Storyboard Pro. I wrote the Bible of the industry called Storyboards, Motion, and Art. I've done hundreds and hundreds of training videos, and I do all the storyboard courses on LinkedIn Learning. And in all the interviews that I've done, a couple magazines started calling me the godfather of storyboarding. I thought, that sounds pretty cool. So I just took it on.
Well, and if you're on LinkedIn Learning, that's a
Yep.
different level or caliber than Udemy, isn't it?
Well, I don't know a whole lot about Udemy. I mean, I had discussions with them a couple years ago about doing stuff, but I had certain conditions that they wouldn't agree to. So I don't really know the overall difference in caliber. I just knew that it wasn't a fit for me and how I work. But LinkedIn Learning, they actually came to me again because of storyboarding. They went to the storyboard software company, said, "We want to do some courses," and the company said, "Well, then you've got to talk to Mark." And so that was, I don't know how many years ago, and I just launched another course just I guess 2 weeks ago. So I'm constantly updating and doing new courses on it.
And what's your latest course on, Mark?
It's how to create a comic book using a software called Clip Studio. And I actually use storyboards from one of my projects as an example of how to reuse existing art. Because a lot of artists like to draw on paper still, comic book artists, and that gives them something they can sell later. But the software is really fantastic. So it's how do you work in any way you want, but still use this software to create your finished piece.
Fantastic. Well, how would your friends describe you?
That you sent me a pre-questionnaire on that, and I thought, well, I could make up my own answers, but that wouldn't be fair. So I asked some of my good friends I've known for over 20 years.
Excellent. Excellent.
So, and I really enjoy, I just took a few of these. And as you can tell this is normal everyday wear, except I have pants that match this.
Oh my God.
So the first one kind of gives you an idea. One answer was, "All the quirky style and business sense of Willy Wonka with a wardrobe to match, just way cooler." I like that. Another one is, "Straight shooter, you tell it like it is, no holds barred," which that sounded good. "A driven and creative dynamo." I dig that. That's cool. "Laser guided, unabashed productivity missile." That almost sounds like a porn movie, but I like it.
Yeah.
Mentor, which I take to heart. I appreciate that. But my favorite one is nerd, and I gladly take that.
That's a really nice friend. Okay, to call it as he's. Oh my God, that's good. So, what is your greatest accomplishment? That can be either business or personal.
Well, it's a mix of both. I mean, my personal one is my kids.
Okay.
You know, they're great kids, and they've done a lot, and they're continuing to do a lot. So that's cool. Professionally, I set a lot of goals for myself, and I attain every one of them. So, you know, it feels really great to constantly hit that and then push myself. All right, what's my next goal? So I take on challenges, and I love achieving them.
Well, I have to comment right here because I take the time to go and do a review of all my guests before they get on the show. I think it's my duty and privilege to do so, so I can be well informed. Like we had a little bit of a chat before we started live. To reach a black belt is a very small number of people, comprised of because I owned a studio years ago and know that it takes, I don't know what the statistic is. I'd have to go back and crunch. Let's call it 1%. So you're part of the 1% club, but then you're part of an even smaller club, a much smaller club of, I would say, Mark, and we'll find the stat about this, but I'm going to say it's 1 in 50 because most people get to black belt and they hang it up and they're done. But you then went on and took on the challenge of after, you know, I'm sure you've had your bruises and scrapes to get there, and we all have. And then you went on and you made a decision, is what it is. This is the crucial part.
Mhm.
You decided you were going to commit, and I don't know how long it took under your quantum nim, but it took another X amount of years. For me, it was a 4-year commitment in order to earn your second degree. Was that about right? Was it, I don't know how many years longer?
I think it was 2 or 2.5 years for me. I was also teaching at the
Oh,
time. My boys and I were associate instructors and instructors, and that helped us get through it. But yeah,
well, the best way to learn something and become good at it is to teach others.
absolutely.
So that again, so you are definitely a goal-oriented guy, and I have obviously a personal bias towards black belts and people
Yep.
that then would go to the next degree with their martial arts. So okay, so let's go ahead. And what do you wish you had known as a younger Mark when you had started out?
I wish I had known how to network. That took me a long time. I, I'm pretty sure I had a chip on my shoulder when I first moved out to LA.
Okay.
And I didn't like small talk. I didn't understand the reasoning for it. It was something I was never taught. And networking is so hugely important. And it's not necessarily to get your first job, but it's continuing to get jobs and advance your career. You know, a job is one thing, a career is something totally different. And
Sure.
attitude behind it is what makes a big part of the difference. So I wish I had understood networking and how to properly do it. I know now, but it took me a long, long time.
Got it. Okay. Well, now you know, and we the gray hair proves wisdom. It's like we become the stage whether we like
I've
it or
earned
not.
every one of them. Yeah.
Yeah, I understand. Me too. And this is called a product of hair dye. So, hey, being totally honest and transparent here, pal. You know, you got the colorful shirt, I got the black one. What are
There
you
you go.
curious about right now? Because as a creative, you're always going to be curious.
Well, you know, I love advancing storyboarding and how to tell stories. So every job I'm learning something on, which is great. I get bored very, very easily. So telling stories, there's always the curiosity on how to tell this story, how to make this joke sell, how to make someone jump out of their seat. But then, you know, on my off time, it's disc golf. I mentioned this to you earlier. It's specialized frisbees, but you play golf, and there's specialized courses called disc golf courses, and it's how to get better at it. So I mean, that's in any time I have off, that's when I'm out practicing and trying to learn.
Okay. What's something you have failed at?
Oh, I got a great little story about this. So I failed at landing one of my book deals. and it was I had written a really bad version of my storyboard book. I'm on the 3rd edition now, but the 1st edition was just what I was doing, a lot of public speaking, which I still do, and it was simply just my slides put together with a little more content. It was back table sales. That's all it was. So I completely rewrote the book, but I kept the same title for the 2nd edition, and I sent it off to some publishers. One publisher was interested, and they said, but before we move to contract, we'd like to see the 1st edition. And naively, I said, okay, and I sent it to them. And I got back a form letter saying, sorry that this book is not up to our professional standards. And I replied, well, no kidding. That's why I rewrote it. But it went nowhere. So I was frustrated. So I figured, they get a lot of treatments and proposals all the time. So I waited 2.5, 3 months, and I sent the exact same people the exact same proposal, because I knew the proposal worked because they were willing to send me a contract. So I sent the exact same thing again, and I got the exact same response. This looks great. We're interested, but we'd like to see the 1st edition of your book. And I replied, no, it's not representative of what the new book is. I want the new book to stand on its own. I will not send the original, the 1st one to you, because I listened and I learned. And they said, okay, and sent me a contract.
Okay, so can you mention the publisher? Oh, it's published now.
Yeah, it's public. It's Focal Press. Yeah. So, and I've written multiple books for Focal Press now. Okay. So the biggest thing was, you don't have to do what people ask. Do what's best for whatever situation you're in. So I refused to send it, told them why, and they accepted it.
That's why you're a 2nd-degree black belt. Persist.
Yeah.
You persist. Well, here's my favorite question. I get that. And I'm a bit of a history buff. And if you could have coffee with a historical figure, any historical figure. Now, condition is they must be already in the afterlife.
Okay.
Who would you choose and why?
It's actually pretty easy for me to answer that. And I would assume it may be, unless you've talked to a lot of artists and cartoonists, that you may not have heard this one. It would be Charles Schulz, the creator of Peanuts.
Oh, see, I thought you were going to guess Walt Disney. All right.
Yeah. Charles Schulz was my original hero. He was the first person I looked up to. Never got a chance to meet him. I did get a chance to meet his wife, Jeannie, a number of times. And I'm one of the few people to ever produce animation for Peanuts. But I never got a chance to meet him. And I really wish I would have reached out and tried to meet him. But, my heroes are cartoonists and artists.
I was never sports Walt Disney for you because of your field.
Well, look, I mean, he would obviously be up there, but I didn't know Walt's name as early as I knew Sparky's Charles Schulz's name. So
okay, all right, well, that makes sense. Sure, yeah, because that's your career. Who's been your most important professional mentor? And this person can be alive and kicking.
I never really had one. My dad coming up, he was always an entrepreneur. So that was a big inspiration. But, professionally, as I've been working, I didn't really have one. What I have is every director I work with teaches me something else about how to tell a story, because everyone has their own way of telling. And my goal as a story artist is always to visually represent the director's vision, not my vision. If it was my vision, I'd be directing it, which I've done. But when I'm working for you as a director, I have to illustrate your vision. So I have to get into your head and tell the story your way, which teaches me new ways of telling stories on every single project I work on. So that gives me this broad depth to always pull from on anything I'm working on. And that's, to me, really exciting.
Okay. And if you could go back, you mentioned one of the things, if you were starting out, would have been networking. Now let's go back to when you were 18 years old. What's the one piece of advice you would tell an 18-year-old Mark?
Well, if the 18-year-old me had decided to work in Hollywood, I already owned a business when I was 18. Actually, I was on my second business when I was 18. But I do a lot of lecturing at schools, and I would give myself the same advice that I give anyone I'm lecturing to now, getting started in something. is get involved in the associations of whatever industry you're in. And in particular, and I don't mean going and standing in the corner as a wallflower. I mean, get involved, offer to help. What I didn't know for a long, long time is the people who run these associations are the movers and shakers in that industry. And you want to get to know them, but more important, you want them to get to know you. Because if you do a great job and you're not getting paid, and anything comes up, they know they can trust you to get it done when you are getting paid. So I would say get involved in a local association of whatever industry you're working in, and then offer in particular to work the sign-in table for a couple reasons. One, at the sign-in table, you meet every single person coming in, which makes conversation easier later. You know who they are and what they do. Two, your job is over when the event starts, so you can enjoy the event. And three, you walk up to people, and now since you've already met them, hey, I got a question for you, and it's easy because you had already met them.
The icebreaker's already handled.
Absolutely.
Very, very good. Astute advice. Love it. So you're a man who, just because of your character and who you are, is always looking forward. So you have some goals. What is your plan to achieve your goals? What would you say is helpful for you and would help others?
Well, I do a tremendous amount of research on anything I'm doing. And so, I know what it's going to take to get into something. And then I just go for it. And depending on what the goal is, it's going to be different on how my approach is, other than I put in the time to make it happen. When I wanted to work on The Walking Dead, when I decided that my wife and I, she and I together decided we were going to move here to Atlanta, one of my goals was to work on The Walking Dead. So I found a connection to someone on the crew, and I asked that contact to introduce me to one of the producers, which they did. And then I drove up to Atlanta from Orlando, and I scheduled a meeting, and I got myself in. And I landed the job working for Walking Dead before I finished my move to Atlanta. So that was a really quick goal that I was able to achieve. But I do that kind of thing all the time. I'm willing to ask for help from people. I listen, I do my research, and I do whatever it takes to get there.
Okay. And how do you overcome a challenge when life rears its ugly head?
Step back and try to look at it with a clear head. Sometimes, failing at a challenge means, well, maybe that's not the right challenge for you. I mean, you don't go for things if it's not going to happen. It's okay to fail. What's not okay is to continue failing, doing the same thing over and over. Make some changes or realize some things just aren't for you. There's some things I wanted to do that, over the years realized, that's probably not for me. So new goals and set off. So it's okay to change a goal. Pay attention to what's going on.
Okay. Now you're already a multi-book author. I mean, how many books have you written totally? In total?
I've written 13 books, not including all the stuff I've done for all my lessons and everything.
All right. So 13 books, 13 published books. But if you had to write a book tomorrow, what would it be?
One of the ones I don't have the complete book, but I've got a title in a couple chapters, and it's called Fire Your Family. And it's a book on how not to get caught up in things that don't matter just because some people say they do. And in particular, just because you're related to somebody doesn't mean you need to like them or spend time with them. I had a great talk with my kids over this past summer. They're seniors in college now. And they were saying how, as they're meeting more and more people, as their circles are growing, how horrible family holidays are. And they said, we never had a bad holiday. I said, that's right, because I don't allow people to come over just because I'm related to them if I don't like them. So, my kids have never had a bad holiday, not once in their life. There's never been arguments, fights, crazy drunken uncles or anything like that. Because just because I'm related to somebody doesn't mean I want them in my life. I've got people I consider family I'm not blood related to, but they're incredible people, and they're the ones that I want in my life. And thus my life and my kids' lives are great.
That's fantastic. And I could chime in, but I'll save it for another day. This is I would just say ditto. Ditto. Okay. What's one question you wish I'd asked you, and how would you have answered? There's always something like, God, I wish he would
Yep.
ask me about this.
All right. So you had mentioned bullying. So, and of course, like any good author, I never go anywhere without my trusty book. So this is one of the last books. I had 2 books that released last year. So this is my memoir of when I was attacked by my bullies, and my bullies followed me home and attacked my whole family. So that's out there now. But there's, as a creative person, and I know that you work with people to advance their career and move either their speaking forward or get more book sales or whatever it is. There's numerous different pathways or funnels, you probably like to call it. And so when I released the book, as I'm a published author, so getting books out I've been doing for a long time. But then, all right, so what else? How else can I use this IP, this intellectual property? Well, I love illustrating stories, so I wanted to make a storyboard. That's what I'm known for. So I storyboarded a segment of the story to get my vision out there, because I also want to create this as a movie. So I started reaching out to studios and show them my vision, not just give them the book, but show them how I would direct the story. So I created the storyboard. But I'm also a comic book fan, and I want to find other ways to get people into reading my book. So I wanted to take the storyboards I had already drawn and repurpose them into a comic book. So there's this software I mentioned earlier, Clip Studio, that makes that easy, but I didn't know how to use Clip Studio. So I wanted to learn it, but I'd rather get paid to do something. So I pitched to LinkedIn Learning to do a course on how to use existing art and turn it into a comic book. They agreed. So now I got paid to learn the software and got paid to create this comic book, which is now done, and it's on my site at marksimonbooks.com. So people can download this short comic book to get an idea of the story that then hopefully will drive them to buy my book, which hopefully, if sales get to the point, will make it a better option for then turning into a movie. So IP can be used in multiple ways and all support one another.
Well, and I love how this topic, because again, before we started the show, I shared the reason I got into martial arts is I was bullied and I didn't like being a victim. So I changed that, and I haven't been bullied since. And I think a part of it is just an attitude. And I also got to be a big guy. But, that whole reason why, I think there's a reason why you do it, and you did it. And I think there is a tremendous amount of people all over the world that can relate to the bullying syndrome. It's a big problem. So I think that's a series more than even a movie. I could see that as a Netflix binge watch, because I could be sitting there eating my popcorn, watching Netflix, because I binge watch on some of these shows I get hooked on, and seeing here's bully number 2 getting his face smashed by little Billy, who got bullied by him, and he came out of the Taekwondo school after keeping it secret, and then fought back against Billy. And I think it would be a great miniseries, at least, because it would catch interest.
I'm good with that.
Yeah, well, it's just a thought. It came to me right here. Whether you do it or not, that's entirely your choosing. So people need to go to Mark Simon Books, and that way they can see because I was impressed, but I went to Mark Simon Books and I saw all your books and great illustrations on the covers. And I thought, wow, this is no wonder you're a creative genius guy. I mean, you're colorful. That's who your personality and your shirt tells it. Yeah. And did you ever wear tie-dyes?
Oh yeah, of course. I've had tie. It's big bold color stands out. It's fun. It keeps me happy. Even my studio. It's not just flat white walls. I've got hidden imagery. I've got hidden doorways here. I made the door in my garage leading into my house looks like SpongeBob's house. I mean, it's literally the entire pineapple. Everything's painted that. I mean, there's SpongeBob in the window. I mean, that's the entrance in my garage. Everything I do is to tell a story I mean, that's a story coming in, and fun. I want to smile when I walk into my house. I want to enjoy walking into my creative space when I come into work.
I love it. I love it. So, personal question: what would you
Yeah.
say about your experience on the show?
Well, you're a great conversationalist. I mean, it's really fun and easy to talk to you. So there's no gap. It's more like hanging out with a buddy and just talking. So that's
Yeah, well, and
it puts me at ease, but but you also bring some great experience of things that you've done and you did your homework. I mean, this has been fun. I could do this for hours.
no, and I appreciate the bullying. We share that. Appreciate the taekwondo. We share that. And the part about speaking. I mean, that's what I do professionally, and I appreciate all that about you. It's hard for me to talk to software engineers sometimes, but I have to want to say, okay, I can't relate. My mind doesn't work that way. I'm a creative in a different way. I don't work with the colors like you do and all this, but it's how to get a message out. I certainly appreciate. So, what's your final word, Mark?
What's my final word? Well, you work a lot with people to achieve goals and to achieve success. And one of the other another book I did last year is called "Start at the Top," and I've never been a believer in work your way up from the bottom. There's obviously some benefits to that. I've just never done it. I've always jumped right to the top of everything that I've done. Uh, and I didn't always succeed at it. So Start at the Top came from, I actually wrote it for my kids as a series of stories on how I've succeeded in a lot of the different things I've done. But I also have chapters there and things that I've gone for that I failed at. And every chapter ends with, so what's the lesson to learn from this? Whether it was success or failure, you can learn from either one if you're willing to. So, that Start at the Top, it's all inspirational stories. And, it's something that I think you can really relate to.
No, absolutely. I'm going to buy it. I'm going to go. Are these books sold on Amazon, or is it better to
Yeah.
go through your book site?
Even if you're on my site, everything goes through Amazon.
Well, I'm going to buy a few of them because I'm going to buy the bullying book. I'm going to buy the storyboarding book, and then this one is a particular interest because that's an interesting perspective. And I want to invite you to have another training, a private training with my group. But you've been a great guest today, Mark. Thank you so much because you've been a real value and an inspiration. And I love that shirt, man. I got to know where you got it.
I appreciate it, Mitch. This is absolutely fantastic. You do a great job. I appreciate it.
Thank you.